In this video, you will learn how to complete Task 3, the Maya adapt to their environment. Now, we did this assignment in class. However, there is a note that says if you are absent on Tuesday, watch this video to guide you through Task 3. So great job on clicking on the video, and you will do exactly what I'm doing. So feel free to pause as we go along to make sure that you're doing exactly the same things. Number 1 says number the paragraphs. Now, when you scroll down, you'll notice that there are only 2 paragraphs. We're still going to number them. The reason why we number them is sometimes in class when we have discussions or in our writing, we need to identify where we found the information, and it's easier if we say something like, as it says in paragraph 1 or paragraph 2. So we've numbered them by writing the numbers in right before the first line, right in front of that first line. So we've done that. You can go ahead and give it a check at the top. Number 2 says, use different colors to highlight the focus questions. So scroll down and you'll see that in the box there are 3 questions, and it did say to use different colors. So I'm switching to my highlighter, and I'm going to color the first one blue. I'm just going to highlight the first one blue. And then I'm going to change colors for my next one. I'll just go ahead and choose red for this one. And then for the third one, I will choose green. Now, you're probably looking at this video and you're wondering, which app is she using? I'm using Notability. I'm using Notability for my laptop, because if I were using my iPad, half the screen would be covered by the desktop every time I type. So this will make it easier for you to see the full screen. Okay, so we've done that. We can give it a check. And number 3 says, as you read, highlight the words that answer the questions using the same colors. And then we're going to answer the focus questions, and in the margin, we're going to write a question and a prediction that are not answered in the reading. Let's do this one at a time. So I like to read the focus questions ahead of time so I know that I'm ready. Number 1 says, what was the Maya's land and climate like? Number 2 says, how did the Maya adapt to their environment? And the third one is a critical thinking question. And that question is, how do you think these achievements impact the size of the population? We're going to focus first on these first 2. What was their land like, and how did they adapt to their environment? So good readers read more than one time. So we're going to model that today. I'm going to read, and you're just going to follow along. No highlighting, no annotations altogether. Paragraph 1. The Mayan civilization spread over much of Mesoamerica, including present-day southern Mexico, Belize, most of Guatemala, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador. The landscape in which the Maya lived varied greatly. Their land included dense rainforests, little surface water, such as streams or lakes, and mountains. One of the difficult challenges the Maya faced was how to grow crops. Paragraph 2. The Maya adapted by developing agricultural techniques for the various environments in which they lived. In the mountains, they built terraces into the hills. The method, known as terrace farming, was useful in creating more flat land for farming. In the dense forest areas, the Maya used slash and burn agriculture. They first cleared the land by cutting and burning plants and trees. They then planted their crops. When the soil was worn out, they engaged in rotating cultivation. After the planting on the land for 2 to 4 years, they would begin planting on different land in order to allow the land to replenish itself of nutrients. After 2 to 10 years, or when the land could again produce more crops, the farmers could again use that land. Okay, so the first question is, what was the land and climate like? And since this is in blue, I'm going to switch to my blue highlighter because I already know from reading it the first time that that was mentioned in the first paragraph. So I'm going to reread the first paragraph. The Mayan civilization spread over much of Mesoamerica, including present-day southern Mexico, Belize, most of Guatemala, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador. The landscape in which the Maya lived varied greatly. Here we go. Their land included dense rainforests. I'm going to highlight that. Little surface water and mountains. One of the difficult challenges the Mayas faced was how to grow crops. So for our first focus question, we'll know where to find those answers. Now, before we go on to the second question, I would like to continue to annotate here because you can probably tell that there is a keyword that's important here. I'm just going to change to my pencil and put a box around Mesoamerica. Put a box around it. And meso means middle or central. So right here we'll write Central America. And then I like that it gives us some details on specifically where those places are. So southern Mexico, Belize, most of Guatemala, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador. Very good. So the second paragraph or the second question is, how do the Mayas adapt to their environment? So when you adapt to an environment, you make some changes so that you're able to survive and thrive in that area. So I'm going to change my highlighter to my second color, which is red. And now I'm going to read this paragraph and highlight the answer accordingly. The Maya adapted by developing agricultural techniques for the various environments in which they lived. Now, sometimes students are tempted to start highlighting, but it just introduced the idea. It actually hasn't given us an answer yet. In the mountains, they built terraces into the hills. This method, known as terrace farming, was useful in creating more flat land for farming. So we have terrace farming, which created more flat land for farming. And then just so I know where terrace farming happened, I'm going to put a box around mountains. Nice, beautiful box there. And then it says in the dense forest areas, so I'm going to go ahead and put a box around dense forest areas. The Mayas use slash and burn agriculture. So let's go ahead and highlight slash and burn. They first cleared the land by cutting and burning plants and trees. They then planted their crops. When the soil was worn out, they engaged in rotating cultivation. So here is another example. Rotating cultivation. Okay, oopsies. So in slash and burn, they cleared the land. So in slash and burn, they cut and they burn plants and trees to clear that land. And all of the nutrients from that burnt bushes and plants and trees, they went into the soil. So the third one here is rotating cultivation. So we have one right here, which is terrace farming. The second one we have is slash and burn. And then the third one is rotating cultivation. So in rotating cultivation, they would plant on the land for 2 to 4 years. And then they would plant on different land in order to allow the land to replenish itself, because the nutrients would need to be replenished. And then they would keep rotating, and then after about 10 years, they could go back to that original land. Okay, So now we can write our answers to the first two. What was the Maya's land and climate like? So I'm going to scroll up. The land is in blue, dense rainforest, little surface water, and mountains. Now, when we do our annotations, it's okay if you're using the pencil, but once we get to our focus questions, you should be typing those answers. So the second question says, how did the Mayas adapt to their environment? And we have that here. They used terrace farming, they used rotating cultivation, and slash and burn. Okay, so I'm going to create my text box right here. And then I'm going to be more specific. I'm going to say in the mountains, terrace farming. And then I will say rainforest. They use slash and burn. And they also used, they actually used two things in the rainforest. So I'm going to go slash and burn and then use my bullets. And the second thing that they did was rotating cultivation. So the next question is, how do you think these achievements impact the size of the population? You can tell by the way this question is worded that it's based on your opinion, but we don't base our opinion on anything else but facts. So we have facts here to help us out. So we know that they planned for, they realized that areas would kind of get worn out, and so they rotated it. They figured out how to have flat land for farming by cutting into those mountainsides. So I'm going to make a prediction here, and you are welcome to write down this prediction since this is your first time doing this. You can say something like, the terrace farming slash and burn and rotating cultivation helped to feed a large civilization, which would make them powerful in Mesoamerica. Awesome. So feel free to pause here if you need to catch up. Now we'll go back to the instructions and we'll see how much of this we've done. We've highlighted the words that answer the questions. We've answered the focus questions. Now in the margin, we're going to write a question and prediction not answered in the reading. So this is the important part. It says not answered in the reading. So for a question, I'm going to give you like what wouldn't be a good example for a question. It would not be a good example to say which areas were in Mesoamerica, because that is directly answered in the reading. You also would not say something like, how did they adapt to living in the mountains? Because that answer is right here as well. It's something that you wonder based on this topic. So this could be a question like, were the Maya influenced by their neighbors in these achievements? Perhaps they learned them from someone else. Maybe they migrated from a different area, something like that. Now your prediction could answer that question, or your prediction can be another idea that you have come up with based on this topic. So I'm going to start my prediction with I predict that. As long as it's on the topic of the geography and adaptations, it's okay. So I'm going to predict that the rotating cultivation kept the people fed and well nourished. Because since they're using different land and they're allowing the land to replenish itself, it kind of seems to me that people would always have enough food to eat. And that is how you complete this task.